All right, so the last thing that we're going to take a look at here is how to use something called TSLint in order to enforce a specific coding style for a TypeScript project. Now, as we've seen, TypeScript does a pretty good job of detecting actual static typing errors and similar syntax errors without any of our help, right? So if we take a variable that we've assigned or that we've defined as a number and try and assign, let's say, a string to it, then immediately we're going to see that little red underline and it'll say type string is not assignable to type number. All right, so that kind of thing is something, as I said, that TypeScript doesn't really need our help on, or doesn't really need any kind of direction from us on. But there are more subtle things at more of an individual or development team level that you might want to enforce. So for example, one common thing that development teams will try and enforce is putting all of your imports in alphabetical order, right? That's a pretty common thing to see. You might also see that certain development teams like to put all of the keys in their objects in alphabetical order. Or maybe you want to make sure that developers aren't leaving extra console.log statements in your code. Those are things that aren't really going to generate any kind of TypeScript warning or error, or more likely, before letting that code get merged into the main branch of your GitHub repo. All right, so for situations like this, there's a technology called TSLint, which is pretty similar to ESLint, except for TypeScript, obviously, that allows us to catch these kind of stylistic errors and make sure that they're brought to someone's attention before letting that code get merged in or whatever it is you want to do with the code. So let's take a look at how to add TSLint to this simple project that we have so far, and we'll take a look at just a few of the simple rules that we can set and modify. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, of course, is install the TSLint package into your project, and what that's going to look like is we're going to run npm install TSLint, and then we'll also install TSLint -config-airbnb. All right, now this package that we're installing here is Airbnb's base TSLint setting. And usually development teams will like to start somewhere, usually with a very commonly used TSLint configuration from a company such as Airbnb. There are plenty of other packages like this as well, but we're just going to use this one because it's one of the most commonly used. So this sort of gives us a base level of TSLint rules that will be enforced across our code base. And we'll see what some of those are shortly. But let's install those. And when you install TSLint packages in general, you're always going to want to add the save dev flag. Now, the reason for this is that TypeScript, in case I haven't made this clear yet, is only used in development, right? In other words, the code that gets run is going to be JavaScript, because really the static types that we add here are just for the benefit of developers. And really, once you actually release the code, any kind of extra typing, etc., would just add overhead and probably slow down your application. So all that means is that you have to add the save dev flag, or at any rate, you'll want to add the save dev flag whenever you're installing TypeScript related files so that they don't make their way into the bundles. So let's install those packages. And once we've done that, what you're going to do is create a new JSON file inside your directory. And this file is going to be called tslint.json. Now inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a JSON object. And the first property we're going to add is going to be extends, and then we'll say tslint-config-airbnb. Now what this is doing is it's saying that whatever lint rules we add or whatever changes we make, we want to use this package, right? We want to use the TSLint settings in this package as a base, right? As a foundation for our own rules. And you know, if we save this, what we can do now is we can run TSLint on our own code to see what errors that generates. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to generate any errors here, because maybe all of our code that's in app.ts and util.ts already fits Airbnb's TSLint configuration. But in order to try this, all we have to do is run npx tslint, and then we're going to add the flag -- project, and then we're going to put a dot. That basically just tells TSLint where our project is. And if we hit enter now, what we should see, and then the first thing we'll see is that it tells us, and by the way, you'll want to take a look at this and see that it says error ts blah, 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 right? That's generally one of the formats that TypeScript TSLint errors will take. And you'll see that it says argument for target option must be, and you'll see that it only goes up to ES2020. All right, now all that this means is that TSLint doesn't like our target being so high, so let's set this to ES2020, and if we run this again, what we'll see is that it spits out this giant list of things that we've done wrong stylistically, according to Airbnb's settings anyway, that we can fix. So for example, if you take a look here, you'll see that it says things like identifier pi is never reassigned, use const instead of let. So what that's telling us is that since we're declaring a variable here that we never actually change the value of, we should just make it a constant instead. All right, now since this was just a coding example here, we'll just leave it the way it is, but you'll also see that it does things like, it says expected indentation of 2 spaces but found 4. So it can get real specific with what it catches. It can catch indentation errors, and this really goes back to the purpose of TSLint in general, which is just to keep your code base nice and clean and consistent stylistically. Right? It can make a pretty big difference sometimes when you're working on larger projects with larger teams when all of the code has a consistent style to it. It just feels better to work on, and a lot of development teams find that it helps them stay more productive and, they just like it better. All right, so that's the basic idea of TSLint. So before we move on, what I want to do is inside our tslint.json file, I want to show you the very, very basics of setting rules for TSLint. Let's say that we want to add a rule that will prevent developers from putting in unnecessary console.log lines. Well, in order to do that, all we need to do is add a rules property to our TSLint file. And inside that object, we'll say no-console, and we'll set that to true. All right, so this will add a rule that will prevent us from adding unnecessary console.log statements. And if you want to run this again, all right, let's just run npx tslint project dot again. What you'll see, if you scroll up to the top of the output here, what you'll see is that there's now this line that says calls to console.log are not allowed, right? So that's just one of many different rules that you can change. I highly recommend you just Google a list of TSLint rules that you can use in your TSLint projects. So anyway, that's how TSLint works, and that is the end of this section. So hopefully you've had fun learning about all of the basic TypeScript syntax, TypeScript types, as well as some of the tools that can be used in TypeScript projects.